Administration. He is working as Senior Assistant Professor in Public Administration in Assam Don Bosco University, Guwahati. Friends, I always see him engaged in teaching and researching. Previously, he has worked in the Rajiv Gandhi National Institute of Youth Development, which is run under the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India. He has invited to deliver lecture in different European and American universities. Recently, he has been awarded with Order for Research Leadership by the Alfred Nobel University, Ukraine, for his research leadership abilities. He is working as Managing Director in the IPAN Foundation. He is Secretary General of the RC10 Electronic Democracy Research Committee of International Political Science Association by UNESCO. He is a member of the editorial board of 3 scientific journals. Those are indexed in Web of Science. He always loves to bring his unique research skills and expertise to the institutions. Friends, such a dedicated researcher is with us today. He, on 21st of April, the second day of the research methodology program, has dealt few research models. Today, he will be dealing few remaining research models. I request him to present NAFLARI's US, Dr. Sarah.
Thank you, madam. Okay, thank you for the warm introduction, madam. So in the previous session, am I audible, madam?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay, thank you. In the previous session, we talked about two widely used models in the research, that is the qualitative model and the quantitative model. In that series, we will proceed further today. To understand the recent models that are being used in today's contemporary research work or research areas, we must have to understand the different types of researches, because the adaptability and the validity of the research models depends upon the type of researches that a researcher undertakes. Researches can be categorized on the basis of various perspectives. For example, on the basis of the application of the study, on the basis of the aim of the study, on the basis of the mode of inquiry, and on the basis of the research approach. So when we talk about the application perspective, the researches are divided into the basic research and the applied research. So what exactly is the basic research? These things are very important to understand, because the models that are being chosen by the researchers, they widely depend upon the type of researches conducted by the researchers. For example, the basic research, it is also known as the primary research, which is conducted to increase the knowledge. It is towards the contribution. When a researcher wants to contribute to the wider pool of research or knowledge, then he undertakes the primary research or the fundamental research or the theoretical research or the pure research. So this type of research it provides an in-depth knowledge about the scientific and the logical explanation and their conclusions. So they widely contribute to the pool of knowledge in the studies. The result of the primary researches are used as a base for the applied researches. It is based on the experiments and the observations that are done by the researchers. The results of or the conclusions of these kind of researches are generally published in the peer-reviewed journals, which become the base for the further exploration or the applied researches. For example, what is global warming? This is a research question. So when a researcher undertakes a research to solve this kind of problem, or how does the universe begin? What do humans get? What do humans get stress? All these are examples of the basic research. Then the applied research. Applied research is conducted to find out solutions for practical problems. As we discussed, that the base for applied research is always the basic or the fundamental or the pure research. It uses the outcomes. It uses the outcomes of basic research. The results of applied research are applied immediately. Means when the researcher concludes, finds a solution, then the solution is immediately applied in to find out to solve the problem. It includes case studies, experimental research. For example, what are the possible solutions to control air pollution? This is a research question, the answer to which would be a replied research, will be through a replied research. When we distinguish or categorize the research on the basis of the aim of the research, then we see that the researches may be descriptive research, explanatory research, analytical research. So descriptive research is carried out to describe current issues, programs, and they provide information about the issues through surveys and various fact-finding methods. It includes correlation and comparative method of research. It follows the ex post facto research, which predicts the possible reasons behind the situation that has already occurred. So when the researchers, they want to find out, they want to explain, they want to describe what were the possible reasons for behind a situation, then they undertake the descriptive form of research. A researcher cannot control its variables. There are two variables, as we previously discussed in our previous session, that there are dependent variable and the independent variable, and the correlation between them cannot be controlled by the researchers, and can report, and the researcher can only report the current situation and it's occurring in the descriptive research. For example, the widespread contaminated disease in a specific area or of a town. Investigation reveals that there is no trash removal system in that area. A researcher can easily hypothesize that the reason is improper trash removal system, which has led to the widespread of this contaminated disease. So this descriptive form of analysis, this descriptive research is known as descriptive research. Then the explanatory research. It is conducted to know why and how two or more variables are interrelated. Researchers usually conduct experiments to know the effect of specific changes among two or more variables. They want to find out how these two dependent and independent, these two variables are affecting each other. What is the effect? For example, a study to identify the impact of a nutritious diet on pregnant women. This type of research is explanatory research. Then another form of research is the analytical research. In analytical research, a researcher can use the existing data, facts, and knowledge and critically analyzes and evaluates the sources and materials. It attempts to describe why a specific situation exists. For example, impact of video games on teenagers. So these kind of analysis is done under the analytical research. When we categorize the research on the basis of the mode of inquiry, then we see that there are two types of researches that we have already dealt with, that is quantitative research and the qualitative research. In the qualitative research, it is based on quality and it looks in depth at non-numerical data. We already discussed in the last session that qualitative researches are subjective in nature, but quantitative researches are objective in nature. This subjectivity also provides a limitation to the qualitative research. On the other hand, quantitative researches also have some limitations. So the qualitative research enables us to understand the comprehensive details of a problem, because the subjectivity, a thorough investigation, their own experiences, their own opinions the researcher's own experience and opinions are also involved in this kind of research. And if the researcher belongs to that particular field, that particular research area, then this type of research becomes very much significant. The researcher prepares open-end questions to gather as much information as possible. As we have discussed, that this type of research is based on the subjectivity, the opinion, what the researcher observes on the ground, what is his own opinion about the particular subject. So in this type of researches, basically open-end questions are prepared, and the researchers tries to gather as much as possible holistic information from the available sources. For example, the stress level among men and women, this is a subject for the qualitative research. The obesity rate among teenagers, it is an example of the qualitative research. Then comes the quantitative research. Quantitative research, as we discussed in the previous session, that it is associated with the aspects of measurements. It involves numeric values. When we give values, when we give numerical values to both the variables, and we try to measure it, we try to quantify it, and we follow a statistical method, we follow the mathematical models, and we follow the computer and the computer techniques to form a numerical data, such as the percentage and the statistics. This type of research is known as the quantitative research. The research is conducted on a large group of population. This is one of the advantages of quantitative research, that it can be conducted on a large group of population. In case of the qualitative research, if the population is very large, then it will become very difficult for the researchers to have in-depth knowledge or to conduct the open-end questionnaire to contact each and every respondent, to conduct in-depth interviews with the respondent due to the number of respondents involved. So when the population is very large, this type of research becomes very much useful. For example, to find out the weight of students of the 5th standard studying in government schools, this kind of research becomes very much significant, where numeric values are involved. So numeric values can easily be provided with, marked with some numerics, and they can easily be collected as well as analyzed. There is one more method of research which combines both the quantitative as the qualitative method of research. Honestly, what is the contemporary trend is that this type of researches is going on. Mixed method is used everywhere. It results in the mixed method, in which the quantitative and the qualitative both methods are used in the researches. Over the last few decades, much of the researches in the world of academia has been conducting using mixed methods. Due to its greater legitimacy, this particular technique has gained for several reasons, including the feeling that combining the two types of researches can provide a holistic and more dependent results. There are shortcomings of both the type of researches, qualitative as well as the quantitative. Therefore, this method, mixed method of research, has gained a lot of attention of the scholars as well as the researchers, and most of the researches nowadays are based on this mixed method. So mixed methods of research involves interpreting and investigating the information gathered through quantitative and qualitative techniques. So using both the techniques, the data has been collected, and now they would be analyzed using both the different analytical methods using the mixed method of research. So when we talk about the aim of the research approach, then we can categorize the researches into longitudinal, cross-sectional, conceptual, and empirical research. Longitudinal research is the research where researchers collect the information at multiple points of time. Usually, a specific group of participants is selected and examined numerous times at various periods. For example, if a researcher experiments on a group of women to find out the impact of a low carb diet within 6 months, the woman's weight and health checkup will be done multiple times to get the evidence of the study. So this type of studies is done using the longitudinal research methods or the models. Then cross-sectional research. Cross-sectional research gathers and compares the information from various groups of the population at the same point. It may not provide the exact reason and relationship between the subjects, but it gives a broad picture to study multiple groups at the same time. For example, if a researcher wants to know the number of students studying in a school, he will get to know about the age group, height, weight, and gender of the students at the same time. So this type of research is known as cross-sectional research. Then there is a conceptual research. This type of research is associated with the concept, which is very significant part of any research. So this is associated with the concept and theory that describes the hypothesis being studied. It is based on the inductive approach of reasoning. It does not follow practical experiments. Philosophers, thinkers, logicians, and theorists use such researches to discover new concepts and understand the existing knowledge. For example, the discoveries of Sir Isaac Newton and Einstein, these all are studied through conceptual research. Then there is an empirical research. All the disciplines of social sciences, they want to attain this empirical approach. So this empirical research is also known as experimental research, which depends upon the observation and experience. It is based on the deductive approach of reasoning. So reasoning is involved in the empirical research. A researcher basically focuses on gathering information about the facts, their sources, and investigating the existing knowledge. For example, is irregular fasting the health weight loss option for women? This kind of research questions are answered through empirical research. The researcher can come up with a result that a certain number of women lost their weight and it improved their health. On the other hand, a certain number of women suffering from low blood pressure and diabetes didn't lose weight and they faced negative impact of irregular fasting on their health. So these can be the outcomes of the empirical research. Here we have to understand that there is a confusion among the scholars and the researchers, and there is no widely accepted, or there is no consensus on a few terms. For example, the research models, the theoretical background, the research strategies, all these things confuse the scholars a lot of time. So whenever a researcher, he begins his studies, he begins with a strategy. So the strategy is, or the research strategy is a process a researcher uses to approach a problem. A researcher, when he starts the research to find out the answers of their research questions, they make a strategy. On the other hand, a research model is a more abstracted way of schematizing a process, so that researchers' strategy could be generalized to solve similar problems in other fields. For example, to study the perception of citizens about certain services in one municipal corporation, if the researcher has done her research and developed a model, then the same model can be used to study the municipal corporation in Lucknow in context of a similar problem. So the research model is a plan for conducting research, whereas theory proposition is an outcome of the research. In the quantitative research, generally work out of model based on which the researchers proceed. So the ultimate aim of a research is to propagate a theory. So the model, it helps the researcher to systematically analyze and to find out the solutions to different problems in similar context. The theories and the models, they help specialists focus on what is changeable and the most suitable areas or target for change. A theory, we all know, is a set of interrelated concepts, definitions, and propositions that present a systematic view of events or situations by specifying relations among variables in order to explain and predict the events or situations. The notion of generality or broad application is important. Concepts thought of as the building block of theory or the primary element. A construct is the term used for the key concept in the theory. Finally, a model is a generalized or hypothetical description used to analyze or explain something. So this concept and the construct we already discussed in our previous session. Theories and models can be useful in planning, implementing, and evaluating interventions. So whenever a researcher, they want some kind of intervention to solve the problem, these theories and models, they can be useful. Theories and models, they help the researchers to go beyond basic unchangeable risk factors. The risk factors includes, for example, gender, socioeconomic status. They help the researchers to answer why, what, and how. The use of models in exploratory research. Exploratory researches are the researches which try to explore something. So the shortcoming of the model is that the researches in exploratory, when you have no earlier models which you can take as the basis of your study. The most unusual reason for using this approach is that you have no other choice. Normally, you would like to take it an earlier theory as a support, but there perhaps is none, or all available models came to wrong context. Exploratory research, it means that hardly anything is known about the matter at the outset of the research, and researcher has to begin with a rather vague impression of what you should study, and it is also impossible to make a detailed work plan in advance. So in case of the exploratory research, the models are not available. Many of the problems of exploratory research can be avoided if the researcher can start with a model developed in earlier studies, which he uses as the working hypothesis. The model can either consist of cases, for example, the holistic model, or of concepts, that is the analytical model. During the analysis, the researchers try to see whether the collected material conforms to the model, or must he collect the model or look for a more suitable one. So whenever a researcher begins with a research to find out the solutions to the research questions, then in that case, he looks for the model. In the exploratory research, the models are not generally available, but in rest of the research, for example, in the scientific subjects like the science, pure science, there are many models and the researchers are using them. In the social sciences, are limitations. There are no such concrete models available because a lot of things depend upon the subjectivity, on the environment. Often the study simply proceeds by enlarging an earlier model. A good rule to be followed in such a situation is start from what is known. Proceed by enlarging the mapped area and connect the new intelligence to the known facts. Sometimes all that you need to know and need to do is only an adjustment of a few details in the existing model. This is often the case when the study shall give grounds for a forecast or new product development, and the environments of intended applications is slightly different from the one of the earlier studies. So a model is adopted by the researchers to find out the solutions of problem in the similar situations. For example, if a similar study is conducted by using a model is the theoretical explanation. It develops under the theoretical background. It is a part of the research design. So by making a few adjustments in the model, the researcher can easily utilize the models and use it for their own researches. The existence of a tentative model helps in selecting the logical structure of the entire research project and planning it. The model helps you to decide which material has to be collected, from which cases or specimens, and about which attributes or variables of these cases. Because the model is an explanation of the entire research, and if a researcher bases his research on a specific model, then he gets a clear picture of about everything, about the materials that he has to collect, what specimen he has to choose, and what the attributes and the variables he has to adopt in the case of his study. Even the recording of observation is facilitated because often you will be able to utilize earlier definitions of variables. The same applies to analysis models. Often you can borrow them from earlier works. So these were some of the shortcomings as well as benefits of using a model. In the exploratory research, there are no such model which the researchers can adopt, but in other kind of researches, there are various models which the researchers can adopt. They can revise it, they can enlarge it, they can modify it, they can include new attributes or new variables, and they can use it successfully. The main benefit of the model is that everything is predefined through the earlier researches. So you can easily borrow them. You can easily borrow these things from the earlier works for your own research. Now, use of models in normative study. In normative study, models are used for describing the existing problems and defining the improvements to the object of the study. If you can find an existing descriptive model of the object, made it in an earlier study, you can often transform it into a normative model by adding an evaluation dimension to it. So these models which are available that we will see in the next slides, they can be easily revised. They provide an add-on factor that the researchers can add to it. They can subtract it, and they can easily use it for their own studies. For example, the model of industrial production can be made normative by adding different dimensions. So this is one of the benefits of the models, research models. So am I audible?
Yes, it's okay, sir.
Okay. So there are various research models that are available. In sciences, the models are well defined, so researchers use them. But in social sciences, these research models can be identified. For example, the scientific model, the ICAN model, the topological models, the arithmetic models, and the analogous models. Here you can see there are two things, that is the empiria and the theory. Empiria means the tentative world, tentative universe, and the theory which is developed by a research. So there is an object, there is a description, and the model. The object of empirical study exists in the tangible world, or in the empiria, as researchers call it. One of the first goals of most research studies is to create a theoretical picture of the empirical object of a study into the conceptual world of thinking and theory. Scientists often use the name of model of this picture of the study of the object of study, as can be seen in this diagram. In the initial phases of the research studies, the model often exists only as an idea in the researcher's mind, but quite soon they will want to put it on a paper or computer too. So the empiria, which is a tangible world, the theory derives from it. When the researchers, they get an idea in their mind, they want to put it in a paper, they want to conceptualize it. So in this model, in the scientific model, the Impedia, it provides a model. Through the research, it goes through an object and a description to the development of a model. In a research studies, two types of theoretical models are used in the scientific model. Those that depict one empirical object or other case of study, and those models that describes a population or of more or less similar cases. The first alternative, a case study, it focuses on only one object or occurrence, and the model is made to depict this object or phenomena. On the contrast, in all other type of study, there are quite a number of study objects that are more or less similar. And in this case, the model should describe what is common to all, or at least to most of the cases or objects in the population. The model is in this case is said to be general. So in all other types of studies, and the objective is to generalize a model, to create a model which is applicable to all kind of researches. The last mentioned goal of empirical study, constructing a single generalizable model on the basis of a number of empirical observation, can be difficult or impossible to attain completely. This is one of the shortcomings of the scientific models. Today, most scientists agree that it is not only practically, but also logically impossible to write an absolute reliable model on the basis of a class of empirical observations. So what happens in the scientific model, in the development of the scientific model, that the models are developed on the basis of the empirical observations, but they have a shortcoming. There is no consensus among the scientists, and majority of the scientists, they consider it as a non-practical and a non-logical method or model. It would also never be possible to know that all relevant cases that should be measured or approach them. Sometimes the number of cases would be so great that you cannot afford to study only a sample of them, and this sample can be biased, and finally all empirical observation can contain error. So in the scientific method or a scientific model, these are the shortcomings. In a single word, it would never be possible to exclude totally the possibility that at least one case remains unnoticed that invalidates the general model and prevents calling it categorically true, while scientists thus would accept the fact that general models never can be absolutely reliable. These models are all the time being constructed and used in nearly all research projects. The reason is that even as imperfect, they belong to the most indispensable tools of research. Besides, they are invaluable for transmitting the results of research to practical applications. So the scientific model, it tries to generalize the things which is practically not possible. In a research study, a general model helps analyzing data obtained from the objects and finding the answer to the researcher's problem. A scientific model need not enumerate all the properties of every object that is being studied. On the contrary, you will normally want to take into account only the interesting properties, that is, those are related to the purpose of your study. Restricting your views to just the essential measurement attributes and properties of the object will help you to manage a large material and unearth the answers to your questions. The principles used when constructing scientific models are theoretical concepts. So the scientific models are based on the the theoretical concepts. Concepts also serve as link between the model and the empiria. As you can see on the screen, that there is a theory, there is empiria, there is an existing theory, there is an object of the study. When the data is analyzed, a new theory comes into picture. That theory may be the basis of a scientific model, but it cannot be all the time reliable. In social sciences, many factors depend upon the environment or the ecology. So the concepts, they also serve as link between the model and the empiria by connecting to their empirical counterparts through the empirical definitions that the researchers has to provide for at least some of the concepts. Another is the icon model. Here you can see the diagram. The diagram is represented through the circles and different dotted diagrams. Dotted lines, they form the diagram. So an icon model, it gives a pictorial representation of the object. The object is usually presented as a two-dimensional projection. The scale and the color are often changed. The less interesting details are omitted, and the presentation concentrates on those details or attributes of the object that are interesting. These are often such static invariances that are common to all or most of the objects which are studied. So in the icon model, a pictorial representation of the object is given. Nowadays, we live in the era of information technology. So a lot of cameras and video recorders are available to facilitate the task of making pictures. However, photographs and recording made with these machines, they often include a great amount of details. They hide the theoretically more interesting features of that object. Therefore, under the icon models in research projects, the method of drawing is often preferred. Drawing like this is often preferred in the icon model. When selecting the method of presentation, one possibility is to adopt the drawing methods of designers. That is one of the benefits of icon model, that you can easily adopt the drawing method of the designers. This includes views and sections from one or more directions drawn to a scale. However, such methods are designed for the manufacture of objects. For the purposes of research, it can be more rewarding to develop a method of depicting what emphasizes exactly those features of the objects which are interesting. This can be accomplished, for example, by an ink drawing in perspective where the non-essential details are simply omitted. So this kind of model, icon model, it gives a lot. Researchers can easily adopt the same drawing pattern. They can easily adopt the coloring pattern, or they can omit various details. In this kind of icon model, generally the photographs and the videography is not preferred because it contains the extra information which is not required. And it omits a lot of information about the figures, about the objects which are required. Therefore, hand-drawn diagrams are mostly preferred in the icon models. Another model is the topological models. The placing of the elements in a topological model reflects the structure of the object. This model can be used for conceptual structures as well as for presenting holistic classifications of objects. For example, this figure is a logical tree which analyzes the concept of usability of products. You can easily see acceptance, utility, usability, linkability, cost. It is related to the effectiveness, learnability, flexibility, attitude. The effectiveness is related to the speed or the error. Learnability is related to the time to learn and the retention. So this model can be represented through a logical tree. Holistic models consist of physical events or a specimen like people or product. This presentation is particularly suitable for taxonomies, that is classifications. Logical tree is preferred in this kind of models for presentation if each individual and every class belongs to no more than one superior class. So in this situation, the logical tree is preferred. However, if in a case an individual or a class belongs to more than one class, a Venn diagram might be better for presentation. So this is the topological model. Now the arithmetic model. Arithmetic model requires that your data are measured with an arithmetical scale. There is a vast selection of mathematical models under the arithmetical models. You can often have great freedom when choosing the type of model. Your data usually allows several alternatives, and you should try to select the most illustrative one. One common mathematical presentations include equations and diagrams. So this kind of arithmetical model is generally used in nowadays. A lot of mathematical and statistical models are being used in the researches, in the social science researches. So in the mathematical presentation, researchers use the equations and the diagrams to present their data. Another model is the analogous model. Usually, the researcher assembles this model on an empty table using the elements offered by a modeling language he has chosen. There may be different modeling languages, but sometimes they may happen to find in another environment an invariant structure which logically resembles the body of study. The other foreign structure or object can then perhaps be directly used as a model. Analogy refers thus to the procedure of transferring a model, that is simply copying and adjusting it from a system to another. Analogy does not necessitate any specific language of modeling. On the contrary, it allows importing models in any language or modeling. Examples of analogous model used in researches. For example, the waves. Waves have served as a model in many fields of science, like the light waves, like the radio waves, the waves like cycles of development, the birth, growth, bloom, decay, and death of a plant or other living organism have been used to clarify the development of human societies and culture. The split up of the social order into subcultural groupings like the corporations, churches, and the associations is precisely analogous to the process of growth in biology. Embryos differentiate as they develop, forming more and more specialized organ. These all are represented through analogous model. The relationships in a family have been taken up in numerous contexts. The father of a movement, the mother science, a daughter company, a master servant relationship, the family tree of architectural style. All these are examples of analogous models used in researches. Another very important is the artistic modeling languages. As we know that there can be different modeling languages depending upon the requirement of the researchers. The researchers are independent to choose the languages, but this artistic modeling language is very much preferred in descriptive researches nowadays, as well as the empirical researches. It is possible to seek and present knowledge not only with specific scientific methods, but also with some methods of arts. For example, through music, the artistic mode of presentation through which the scientific methods can be presented. The drama, the dance, and the performance of action. The plastic visual art or sculpture, it is often used for describing situations in human life and is also capable of expressing evolutions. So to present the knowledge, these all methods, the artistic modes can be used. These are basically modeling languages which a researcher can use while using the different models of researches. So that was all about the presentation. I hope all of you have understood it. So if you have any questions, you are welcome to ask. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, sir. Yeah. Dear participant, you have any questions, any queries, any doubt about this lecture? You can ask participant. Ma'am. Ma'am. Okay.
Yes, sir, I'm there.
Okay. Okay, continue.
Yes, sir, thank you. Is there any query or question to the participants? Anybody want to ask? Okay, if no, then we
Hello.
will conclude. Yes,
Hello.
yes, sir, hello.
Very nice guidance given by sir. I'm very thankful for this guidance. My question is in literature study, what method should we select in this new area?
Okay, thank you for the wonderful question. What kind of literature study do you want to do? A qualitative descriptive study?
Qualitative descriptive study, sir.
Okay, in descriptive study there are no such models available which can easily be followed. These models are basically for the very much similar to science. They are actually scientific models which a researcher chooses when he tries to do a research in a similar kind of situation or similar kind of environment, or to find a solution to a similar kind of problem. For example, if a researcher has gone through has observed a problem that is similar in two different municipal corporations, and he know that there is a model which can be used, which can be applied in the similar situations in both kind of municipal corporations, then the researcher can choose the model. In literary descriptive research, you can take the researches which are previously done in the same area, in the same previous researches which are done by some great scholars. For example, the researches that were done by Nirala, for example. So you can take the example, you can choose those models which will be your guiding light for your research.
Thank you, sir. But actually, when we do research in literature, researchers find difficulty, sir.
Yes, sir,
because
that is
in
true.
other sciences, it is very easy to. I think it may be easy to do research with the help of quantitative methods, but in literature, it's quite find difficult to do. So my question was that what method is appropriate for literature study in this new areas, new arena or new age, sir?
If you can convert the variables, if you can highlight, if you can identify the variables in literature, then you can easily use the quantitative methods. But as far as I understand, it is very difficult to quantify the literature. For example, if you want to study what is the contribution of the scholars in suppose Hindi literature, what is the percentage. If you cannot quantify it, if you cannot turn into numerics, it will be very difficult to use the quantitative method. But one of the best advantages of the qualitative method is that you will have an in-depth study of the subject. One of the shortcomings of the quantitative method is that it do not provide a holistic approach. It do not uses a holistic approach. It do not goes in depth. That is why a mixed method is used. But in literature, I will suggest that you please continue using the qualitative and the descriptive method.
Thank you, sir, so much.
Because it is very difficult to quantify. It is very difficult to numerify the variables and identify the variables.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any more question? Okay, participants, I think you don't have any query or question. So shall we conclude, sir? Phule, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Okay. So friends, as we know that model is very technical part in research methodology. And while applying it, it is very complicated and difficult also to choose. I think Dr. Saurabh Chandra has enlightened it in a very simple manner. And he also explained it theoretically as well as how to use practically. I thank Dr. Saurabh Chandra for his brilliant presentation. I also thank to Dr. Suresh Phule sir, Professor Suresh Phule sir, the program director. I also thank to Professor Vishwanath Panchal sir, Professor Manoj Birajda sir, Praveen Suryavanshi for their technical assistance. And of course, I thank all the participants, and we conclude with this today's all the presentations. Thank you. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Okay.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Panchal sir.
ठीक है सर, एंड कर दो.
Yes, yes. Okay, sir.
ओके सर, राइट
Okay, thank you.
राइट.
Sir, feedback link पाठवा, sir.